Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Shong. If you have not done so already, you can pause and subscribe to my channel. Thanks in advance. As Omicron is spreading throughout the mainland China, mass testing, strict quarantine rules, and lockdowns have become part of daily life again. As discontent about the lockdowns has been growing on Chinese social media, the hashtag "Why can't China lift the safety measure just like foreign countries" is top trending on social media platform Weibo, where it had received over 490 million views on last Wednesday. Over the past months, China's COVID policy has seen more online criticism. CCTV, Chinese Central TV station, conducted an interview with Liang Wannian, who is a strong advocate of China's dynamic zero-COVID strategy and the leader of China's COVID-19 expert panel. A fragment of the interview went viral on Chinese social media, receiving over 140,000 likes on Weibo alone. In the interview, Liang responded to a question about China's ongoing pursuit of zero COVID, while many foreign countries recently easing COVID safety measures or removing them altogether. How much longer can China keep up its strategy? Liang's answer was something like this: protecting people comes first for China. Just like President Xi Jinping now famous slogan said, "Put people and their life first." Unlike some other countries, China has not chosen for a strategy where restrictions are removed and COVID is no longer seen as a critical threat to society. Protecting the people is more important than a so-called herd immunity, Liang says. If the virus would run its course, people would suffer, especially the elderly and the vulnerable. Instead, China is sticking to its strict measures and meanwhile is increasing its vaccination rates and winning more time for more research and the development of COVID-19 treatment. Liang's comments emphasize that China's current strategy is the best choice for the people and the country. But it sends out a different message than the remarks recently made by Zhang Rongmeng. Zhang is the vice president of Beijing's Ditan Hospital. In an interview, Zhang said that Omicron infections were milder than a common flu and more like a cold. That interview later seemed to be censored on social media, but it did not stop some people questioning China's strict measures for something mild like a cold. Although many people on Chinese social media are fully supporting China's zero-COVID approach, these discussions triggered by the hashtag "Why can't China lift the safety measure just like foreign countries" are also heavily controlled. Since the outbreak in late 2019, China's success in controlling the spread of the virus has been praised by many. The cost of keeping COVID-19 closest to zero was met with a lot of understanding and approval from netizens. For example, city of Chengdu entered a wartime mode in December of 2020 after only 7 domestic COVID-19 cases. Millions of Shijiazhuang residents were banned from leaving the city and had to undergo tests in January of 2021. Shanghai Disneyland closed its doors in November of 2021 and 34,000 visitors needed to be tested after a single COVID case among the public and so on. But by late December of 2021 and early January of this year, online sentiment seemed to shift as the country saw an increase in local outbreaks while authorities still try to wipe out all traces of COVID-19, especially in light of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. Online criticism of China's extreme efforts to contain COVID-19 also came earlier. In November of 2021, when a pet dog was killed by epidemic prevention workers in the city of Shanghai while its owners were being quarantined, people were outraged and blamed the Shanghai government for its seemingly indifferent responses to the incident. The strict lockdown in the city of Xi'an, beginning on December 22nd of 2021, triggered anger and disbelief online over the way in which local authorities were managing the COVID-19 outbreak and the lockdown itself. Many residents dealt with food shortages. Some were forced to leave their homes for quarantine in the middle of the night, and others dealt with the consequences of a lack of efficient and speedy response to people's need for urgent medical care. After one pregnant woman suffered a miscarriage in front of the hospital gate, she was not allowed to enter due to COVID test procedures. The public's anger reached a boiling point. Although the hospital in question later apologized, the anger did not subside. One popular blogger wrote, "Are we really fighting the epidemic to save lives?" When another pet dog was beaten to death by health workers in early March of 2022 in the city of Huizhou, many were outraged that such an incident could happen again. This epidemic has been going on for several years. Why does this keep happening? First Shanghai, now Huizhou. It's heartbreaking, someone wrote. Shortly after the Huizhou dog incident, footage is showing chaotic scenes at the Shanghai Six People's Hospital circulated online. The hospital was sealed after a patient tested positive for COVID. Nurses who felt they were not given enough protective measures to treat COVID-19 patients were still forced to work, leading to actual physical altercations between medical workers. One post about the incident received over 143,000 likes on Weibo, with some calling the incident shameless. On March 11th, thousands of people got stuck at the China International Beauty Expo in the Canton Fair Complex and needed to get tested after a member of staff tested positive for COVID. After videos showed a mass of people in one of the halls, more netizens were openly questioning if this is the right way forward for China's COVID approach. One Weibo user recommended Shanghai residents to keep a go-bag at hand with toothbrush, an extra pair of underwear and socks, and some small blankets or sleeping bags just in case they get stuck at work or elsewhere due to the COVID measures. One Zhengzhou woman was recently quarantined inside a hot pot restaurant for 3 days. Due to the increase in temporary local lockdowns, some on WeChat and Weibo have dubbed this year as China's 2022, 2020 TOO, saying that it sometimes feels as if everything has gone back to the initial stage of the COVID outbreak back in 2020. A social media post by a Shanghai resident who tested positive for COVID-19 has also triggered discussions regarding China's COVID-19 approach. It is a lengthy post titled "A Shanghai Resident's COVID Records." The Weibo user is nicknamed Himuch. She described the chaos and inconvenience of staying at a central quarantine location for a few days. Himuch tested positive for COVID-19 during a community test on March 18. She had a fever that day. It was gone the next day. When Himuch tested positive again on the 19th, she was bombarded with calls from various health workers regarding quarantine, but did not receive clear information on where she was going or what she needed to prepare. On the morning of the 20th, Himuch was eventually transferred to quarantine at a local hospital together with other people who tested positive. Himuch describes how on the 23rd of March, after 4 days, not a single doctor or nurse has come to check on the patients. No tests, no temperature checking, no medication. A 19-year-old patient suffering from high blood pressure who stayed in the same room also did not receive proper care nor her prescribed drugs. The Shanghai resident further writes that her mother, who also had to be isolated, was sent to another hospital where there were no beds. She spent the first night on the floor in the hallway. The social media post triggered many questions. Why were asymptomatic patients sent to a hospital where not only they were not receiving care, but actually were worse off than in their own home? Why were people with no symptoms or minor ones taking up the hospital beds of people who actually need life-saving care? One comment said, "Can we alleviate the pressure of this social epidemic?" Another person responded to the post says this: "Medical resources are being wasted. Other patients can't normally see a doctor. Healthcare workers are exhausted. Entire neighborhoods where people are not testing positive are locked down for days. So many people are losing their jobs because shops are closed." Oh, by the way, this comment is now censored. Someone said, "This epidemic is turning people crazy." Really? One policy hasn't even become clear before the next policy is issued. New policies keep getting introduced and are updated all the time. Another commenter asks, how many years have passed? What's the difference between now and 2020? The growing discontent on Chinese social media is being met with increased efforts by state media and official channels that promote China's COVID strategy. State-controlled media push forward expert views from Liang Wannian or renowned Dr. Zhang Wenhong, emphasizing that the potential death toll of relaxing COVID measures would be too high and that China cannot afford to lie down flat and let the virus run its course. Weibo as a platform is also actively promoting a positive attitude regarding China's fight against the virus and is updating posts directly related to concerns about the local COVID measures. One example is the post by a Shanghai resident who describes that they are in a locked-down compound and cannot get an ambulance for his father who needed urgent care. Weibo later added a sticky bar to the post with an update saying that the father was finally admitted to a local hospital, albeit a few hours late. While calls for easing existing measures are growing, there are also many netizens who still strongly support China's COVID-19 approach.
有点慢了一点，好像管了个，感觉这个风控还是应该是好的，也是。
Another sentiment expressed by many is that there is no universal approach to the pandemic, but that every country needs to figure out its own way of dealing with the COVID crisis, and that China is tackling the epidemic situation in the way that suits China best. Since there seems to be growing polarization between those who support China's strict anti-COVID measures and those who think the measures should be eased, various commenters jokingly suggest that following solution: why don't we lock up the people who don't support a lifting of the lockdown measures together, so that the people who support an end to the lockdown can resume their regular lives? Others think that even if the restrictions would be eased and the measures would be lifted, there is still a long road ahead. The epidemic situation, the air crash, the war, international relations. After 3 years of experience all these things, people's emotions are reaching a boundary point. I can imagine that once all of this is over, there is still a long psychological and a spiritual struggle waiting for us, one comment said. Very likely the case, I believe. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.